Welcome to the Innovation Squadcast. If you are looking for a podcast about instructional strategies enhanced by technology, you came to the right place. In our conversations, we will talk with tech experts, share ideas and strategies to help you build your toolbox with tools that you can use in your class immediately.
Welcome to Innovation Squadcast, and thanks for making us part of your educational PG journey. First-time listeners, welcome, and for our returning listeners, welcome back. We are in for a treat today because we are talking gamification with Michael Matera. Michael is the author of Explore Like a Pirate, Gamification, and Game-Inspired Course Design to Engage, Enrich, and Elevate Your Learners, and co-author of Fully Engaged Playful Pedagogy for Real Results. With over a decade of teaching experience across international, public, and private schools, Michael is renowned for his expertise in using interactive play, passion, and purpose-driven learning to transform classrooms. In this episode, Michael will guide us through strategies to increase student engagement and student ownership through gamification. Get ready to be inspired as we delve into the world of gamification with Michael Matera. Before we get started, though, let's pause for this week's tech tip. This week's Google Tech Tip is looking at how we can link transparent shapes inside of lots of different Google documents, Google Slides, Google Drawings, or Google Docs. In this case, we're working in a Google slide. And so I've got this particular image linked with a transparent shape. So if I click it, it takes me into a blue slide. So let's show you how I did that inside of there. So what I want to do is I want to bring in a shape. So click my shapes. In this case, I'm bringing in a circle. Select that circle over the image that I eventually want to link. And so it brings in this image that has filling and has a border color. We can get rid of those images and those border colors by going to the top, changing the fill color, and also changing the border color. So I want to select fill color, change that to transparent, go to border color, change that to transparent as well. Now I've got a transparent image over the top of my button. Once I use Control K or right click and go to link, it brings up now all of my different options. I can paste a link in here, I can search inside the document, or I can link that to slides in this presentation. In this case, the green one goes to the third slide. So now when I go to present, I can click now the green button and I go into the green slide. So that again works, being able to link lots of different shapes inside of Google using that transparent shape, being able to link images, pictures, whatever it is that you want to do to outside places or within the slides as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this week's tech tip. Hope everybody enjoyed that tech tip. Michael, so glad for you to join us. Anything I left out from the introduction that you would like to share?
No, that's a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much. And excited to be here and chit chat, a passion of mine.
We're good. And I am Jimmy Kate.
And I'm Pam Hubler.
And I'm Kendall Lloyd.
And so we're innovative learning coordinators in Berkeley County School District. And really just wanted to dive right into gamification and kind of what inspired you to get into gamification and how did it transform kind of teaching for you and why it became such this great passion of yours?
Yeah. So what got me into it was this idea. I kept seeing districts bring in different specialists, or different PD that focused on a particular aspect of education. And I don't know, it just seemed to me that every time in my classroom, that shouldn't be the focus, not to like point anybody out, but like, I don't think our kids have a literacy problem or a math problem. Like, I don't think they're cognitively like worse off than they were a decade ago.
Right.
But like, that's what our district kept bringing in. Like, oh, we'll bring in like a reading specialist. We're going to focus on literacy this next 2 years. And while numbers might have gone down and like they could measure that, again, I just didn't believe that kids were markedly worse at literacy today than they were a decade ago. And so I just feel like the answer, and I still feel like the answer today, we have an engagement problem. Like when we think about how everything else in our world has changed, from our childhood to their childhood, but school really hasn't. Like you still read in a book, you still answer some worksheets, there are units, you sit, maybe they're not in rows anymore, but they're in desks or whatever, but it's still like you go to a room, teachers give you some sort of challenge, and then you leave that room and you go to another room where teachers give you some sort of challenge. Like that hasn't changed at all. And that's above our pay grade. We can't change that.
Right.
But when you think a kid goes home, when I went home as a kid, my options were play with matchboxes, play with Legos. or play outside like
Mhm.
in the sandbox. Those were like my three choices. Now kids get, like YouTube, Netflix, all sorts of video games in which they can connect and play with anybody, anytime, with friends, without friends, doesn't matter. And again, you go back to that classroom and we're like, oh, like they're struggling at reading. So we're going to bring in a reading specialist. It's like, I think it's engagement. Like, I think if you make that class more dynamic, they will score what you want them to score, is
Right.
my belief.
And you have one of the things you said in Explore Like a Pirate is gamification is applying the most motivational techniques of games to non-game settings like classrooms. And I think that's perfect. I have that highlighted in my book.
Yeah. So like we're not talking about playing Monopoly in class.
Nope.
But like, what is it about Monopoly that gets people to spend that time? Could we make a more intriguing classroom? Could we make an experience instead of just a lesson for our kids?
And I always relate it back to I normally talk super loud, so that's
Pull it
why
up a little bit. Yeah, you're good.
they always fuss at me because I'm so loud. That's when I do the sessions in our summits or when I talk to teachers. That's how I started off, just like you said, Michael. I have a fourth grader, and he's not learning any differently. It's just how we approach it. Like, I mean, that's exactly what you said. We gotta reach to them.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, like, their world is so much different.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like a good example of tech that is useful. We're super excited about it. Take Google. I remember when I first used Google Docs and thought it was great, and I could push out information to students and make a copy or have them look at the same doc, whatever. That is amazing technology. But you have to admit, like, here I'm staring at your guys' short show notes. That is no different than the worksheet that was handed out in the 1982. Like, it's a
Right.
white document with black and white text on it. And we get excited. We're like, yeah, but you can like edit at the same time. But
Yeah.
like, that's, come on, to a kid that like defeats some monster with like their friends online with crazy graphics, like 5 blinky cursors on the same white document is
Yeah.
not exciting to them.
That's true.
Yeah, 100%.
So can you share some specific examples of gamified learning experiences like that have had a significant impact on student engagements in your class or just overall learning outcomes?
Yeah. So I think what gamification does, if you're going to do it, well, first and foremost, I would want to tell everybody when I'm talking about gamification, the brand that I'm talking about is more than just like a Kahoot or a Gimkit. So some of like your crowd might have believed that's what I mean by gamification. That would fall under gamification. I can't say that it doesn't, but to me, that's like the shallow waters, if you will. Like there's a lot you could make fun of about those. Like that's not the type of gamification I'm talking about. So when I'm talking about building an experience for kids, that always will begin with your relationship with the kid. So in a gamified classroom, before we can even, in my mind, talk about the experience, if I just hand you that experience and you go do it, it may fall flat if you don't have the groundwork laid about building an engaging classroom that starts with the relationship with students. And I know a lot of people talk about that, and I will be just one more person that says relationships matter, because they do. Like any good teacher knows, whatever pedagogy you're doing, you have to have that in place. Even if you're doing direct instruction, like kids won't listen to you unless you have a good relationship with them. But beyond that, beyond having the good relationship with students, I think it's really some of the experiences I've had with kids trade on some of the most powerful techniques in a gamified experience. So I'm thinking like making sure they have teams, right? Teams matter. Making sure there's choice. Some of those choices we may see as not meaningful, but it is meaningful to them. So if you think the video game, you start that video game, and the first choice sometimes in a video game is, do you want to be like the mage? Do you want to be like the archer? Do you want to be like the thief? Do you want to be like the big barbarian? All 4 of those can beat the game. This isn't like a multiple choice question where it's like, oh, you better choose right because you're going to be messed up. There's a benefit to all of those, and there's a downside to all of those. That is a meaningful choice. And could we build into a lesson an opportunity where they get to choose something? Doesn't have to be type like warrior types, but like, can we give them what they will perceive as meaningful choice? Like, I identify with this. I want that benefit, and I will handle that negative because I'm prepared to do that. That's an interesting choice right off the bat, as opposed to I've handed out 25 of the same worksheets and we're all going to start on number one. Number one is, do you understand how to fill in this blank? A kid is like, where am I in this? Like, you are going to serve that to everybody. We gave a meaningful choice right up front, even if it's not meaningful to us. Because if all four of those in my example were still pointed at them doing how to write a paragraph, like if that was the lesson, if that was the activity, all of them have to still at the end of this period write a paragraph. I win either way, but I gave them a meaningful choice in which they could pick from. I think a lot of my gamified experiences have, like I said, teams, meaningful choice. I don't know. You have moments where kids can have that epic moment, like that last buzzer sort of shot, if you will. Like, I think a lot of gamified experiences lend themselves to these cool comebacks moments. And the research on joy and happiness, like the things that are most memorable are either incredibly painful, which I want to avoid,
Right.
or incredibly pleasurable. And like those moments are, even for the spectator, even for the teams that lose, they still go to lunch saying like, you wouldn't believe it. Like, Pam did this crazy thing. And like, in the end, pulled out like a 8-point turn and ends up being the win for the day.
Yeah, I used to do Survivor, like the reality show. We did that for like the semester in our class, and I still have students today talking about when they got voted out, or when somebody played a hidden immunity idol and they got saved, or they talk about those experiences, and I just thought about that too, because that's really what the kids would go talk about, those crazy experiences, and that definitely built excitement for the classroom.
Right.
So,
and we use the Bartle test that you have on your site. We use that with our first gamification session, just so that way the teachers would get an idea of what type of gamer they were. And we did that in our team too, just because it's interesting. Like, a lot of us are socializers, and what was the other one?
Explorers. I was an explorer.
Yeah, socializers and explorers. We didn't have many that were. What's the one where you actually like want to win? Like, always. What was?
In the one we build, we call those, I think, conquerors.
Yes. Yes. There weren't a lot of conquerors on our team, or really
described us perfectly.
Yes. But it really did. And that was talk about building relationships, understanding how different people are, but then you also find other people in your classroom or in your group that are like you. And then when you're working together, it just makes more sense. So that was another great activity that y'all have.
Yeah, I think too, like understanding what types of students you have. Like, when you look at the Bartle test, there's 4 categories. There's that conqueror, which, like you're saying, it's interesting in the school setting. All of this was built for a video game sort of setting. And the conqueror in a school setting can sound really bad. It's like, in a school setting, it sounds like the person that cheats. But in a video game system, it's the person that's actually like ultra efficient. Like, you could go in the dungeon and slave away beating skeletons for 8 hours. I'm just going to wait out top. You're going to come out and I'm going to like kill you in the video game, which is fine, and then take your stuff. So in 5 minutes, I get what took you 8 hours.
Right.
So it's like efficiency. So in school, think about the kid that doesn't understand in math why they have to show their work. Like, if they're getting the right answer, like, but the conqueror will be getting the right answer. Like, they're not efficient and failing, they're efficient and succeeding. So understand that you have students that value efficiency more than anything else. They want to write 2 sentences where you wanted a paragraph, but to them, they're like, those 2 sentences say what you want. You just want a fluff intro sentence and you want a fluff ending sentence. Like, I gave you the answer. And I think it's important we think about that. We have that explorer. I think the explorer is best summed up by like the B student, and not in a bad way. It's just, they would rather get to the next activity than perfectly master. They're like, I get it. And when it counts, I can make it like A-worthy, like, but I'd rather go learn the next thing. And then you have the achievers that are like, I just want you to constantly shower me with like, I'm doing it right, which has its negatives too. I think those people lack that full confidence in their work. But And then you mentioned socializers. Socializers make up 80% of the video game world.
Wow.
So like, and again, as a teacher, what are we building? And a socializer doesn't mean goofing around. Like teachers know this. A socializer in a video game setting means they want to use their social clout and social network for the benefit of the group. Like it's not that they're goofing off. So when I told you what have I built that was beneficial for kids, I often said like a key ingredient to me is groups, like, and groups that matter, groups that like maybe they have that meaningful choice, so that that socializer can talk to everybody and be like, oh man, I think Jeremy, I think you should be the mage because then we would have this. And Pam, like I know that you're like this, so how about we? And that is a socializer, someone that wants to use their voice and their understanding of everybody to make the team stronger. That's
I
a
wish I had
fantastic.
that. Yeah. I would have gotten it. I got in so much trouble because of the socializing part. So it would have been nice to be able to use it for good.
But if we never provide students with that ability, right? If it's just in rows looking at the worksheet, that socializer is dying to get out of the seat and say like, hey, like let's work together, let's do this. And you're like, oh, back in your seat, back in your seats.
So speaking of all those tests and all that, how do you balance structured curriculum objectives with the flexibility and creativity of gamified learning?
Ooh, I saw that question on there. And it was like, I don't know.
For yourself though, like you don't really have to have an answer. But now that I think about it,
So I'm literally vacillating between how much truth do I give you. That is what I'm trying to think about.
Yeah, we want to hear the truth.
Yes.
The truth for me,
This is for teachers, so
I don't know if you guys would agree, but the older I get, the longer that I teach, the more I have trust in what I'm doing. And that means I need, no offense to my district, I need less guidance in that. And so I'll be honest, like I don't know how much I spend time thinking exactly about the district's curriculum or goal set because it's already ingrained in me. Like it's happening naturally. So I'm not saying that I'm not meeting them, but I just have faith that I am meeting them, right? Like,
right.
And I feel like the more I used to concentrate on it, it was in my younger years of teaching. And so it felt more robotic when I was teaching it. And that could be a function of me focusing on the thing, or it could be a function of me being young in my teaching career. I don't know. But the more that those goals just kind of went in me, and then I didn't pay attention to them. They're just in me.
Right.
And now I'm paying attention to me and the needs of my students and achieving, I guess, more my goals, but my goals were shaped by the district goals, if that makes sense.
Right.
But I care so much more about making, I always tell my students, my goal is to make you the best version of yourself at 12 years old. They're gonna change and be better, but like that's my goal.
Yeah.
And of course that aligns with my district's like writing and reading standards and whatnot. But like the more I used to like, I don't know, I used to put the goal up on the board. Like today we were doing goal 8.75 and like, it just seemed robotic. Like the kids were like, do you even care about me? And it's like, oh, I care about 8.75.
Right. No, I felt the same. I use this exact same words in my classroom. Our goal was to make you the best version of yourself, and we also we have work and life skills in our district, and so I would also, use those a lot and emphasize those work and life skills because I thought that was going to help them. And so I think you're going to learn a lot of those work and life skills through the gamification as well. So
right.
And I feel like those standards that, like you said, I mean, they kind of end up in there no matter what. Like even if it wasn't intentional, they have to pull that knowledge and that information together to be able to come up with the product.
Teachings.
Yes.
Unintentional.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too, kind of a side note, but like, I think the reality is life, the real world is messy.
Yeah.
And gamification, while it is a contrived thing, right? While you are saying, we're going to put you in the situation in which you have to collect this many things or do this many tasks or whatever, however you build it, that is contrived. But it, to me, is closer to reality because there's so many paths, so many choices, so many things. And there is some level of ambiguity. Like last week, I played a game with my students where I am the sole judge on creativity and content. Well, content, I can say, well, he had 3 facts, you had 2 facts, Pam. But that creativity piece, I don't know. Like that is just, it's playing the game apples to apples. Like I am the sole judge to this, giving kids advice. But to me, that seems more real. These were not grade points, these were game points. But I got to give you all feedback on how to make a better, higher quality product. And I think when we focus too much on individual standards, I worry we are also reducing what it means to be good to just those standards. And that's not like the real world. Like, think if you tried to ride a bike only by meeting standards. There's so many there's so many things in
Yeah.
between those standards. I'd be like, well, I'm doing the pedaling right and I'm doing the handlebar right, but it's still not working.
You definitely
know,
wouldn't be coming to my cycle class.
Right? Like, and I just think I worry if we focus too much on individual, like, hey, I have these 5 standards in my class. There's more than those 5 standards in life.
Just intertwines
Yeah.
very well.
Sounds good. Well, we do need to, and we are work for the Office of Technology, so we would like to discuss like what roles does technology play in gamified learning, and how could it, kind of enhance that student experience and enhance the gamification, I guess.
100%. So I always say that you don't need technology, right? Like this can be low tech, high tech, or no tech. I mean,
Right.
But through my work with John Meehan and EMC2 Learning, we often try to design things where having technology would matter. So, for example, low tech would mean that there needs to be like the teacher's screen, right? You need to have like at least a single device and a projector. That's helpful. That like frames the activity, that has a timer involved in it, maybe some scoring happening up there. That's like low tech. High tech would be an experience in which, yes, every kid needs their device. Technology plays, I think, an instrumental role. I do hope that more and more districts across the United States get funded and supported to have a one-to-one environment. But critical to that one-to-one, I would hope there is professional development on the teacher side, that again, these don't just turn into high-tech worksheets, right? Like, I'm thinking about an activity we have on the site that I super love. It's called it's a review activity called SOS, and there's a bunch of them. They stand for Save Our Students. And it has all the kids in your class in one slide deck. And that slide deck, for lack of a better term here in this podcast, has, let's say, 30 things to get done, 40 things to get done, more than they'll ever be able to get done in your period. But it feels this like video game-esque. They're all in the same thing, and the document looks beautiful, right? It's not a Google Doc, it's a Google slideshow. So it feels video game-esque. You literally, the words and language you have to use is they're going to different parts of your ship or your castle, depending on what theme you're going with. And it's like, oh man, like the engine room's broken. Who can get down to the engine room? And they have to go down to that slide and do that task now. That feels video game-esque. And I could not do that without a one-to-one environment. Like this is very helpful that I have one Google slide for this whole class period. I just had to make 5 Google slides for my lesson.
Right.
And now I'm set, because all 25 of you are going to go into this slide deck and work for 45 minutes and enjoy it. And there's smiles and there's hand high-fiving, and like, it's awesome. And I'm getting a ton of content and creativity back from my students. That could not happen without a one-to-one environment.
I love that. And I know this is not on here, but it made me think, because I know the more we get into the gamification, the more teachers are like, if I was going to start somewhere, where would I start?
Right.
Besides the website.
That was my next question.
Yes.
That's every summit we do have a gamification workshop, and we really are trying to push it out. Like, we've got some on board, but how do we continue to push it? Because we enjoy it. So
I think I have several answers to where to begin.
Yeah.
I think realizing that like you shouldn't fear the change of gamification. What it's going to do, it's going to wrap around what you already do and make what you already do better. So that fear of like, oh, but I have my like unit I love. I love that Westbourne expansion unit. I don't want to change a thing. So I'm going to shut off and not listen to you because I want to keep my unit. It's going to make whatever you do better. And actually, there's quite a lot of research that shows that direct instruction, gamified direct instruction is better. Like the outcomes are better. Like gamified project-based learning, better outcomes. Like it literally will just, you're sprinkling better on whatever you already do. So one, don't fear the change.
Mhm.
Two, a lot of them can be, especially if you end up going to our website, a lot of these activities can just be a one-day gamified experience, much like Friday, board game night at your own house. It doesn't mean that you play Monopoly every week. You can pull off categories and play categories today, and that's awesome. And in that one day, that one experience was a gamified fun moment. Same with our website. There are just hundreds of one-day activities you just pull off. And so if a teacher wants to get started, it's a single lesson. Like
Right.
pull that off the shelf, match what you're doing. The one I just described, for example, is a review activity. So at end of any unit, whether you're an English teacher, math teacher, history teacher, doesn't matter. Pull that one off the shelf. And then my other more complicated answer would just be, when people are talking about making a gamified unit, like when you talk about bigger than a lesson, should I make a gamified unit or should I make a gamified year? I used to always say, start small, start with a unit. That is what I did. That was my journey. But I honestly think it is just as hard to make a gamified unit as it is to make a gamified year. It's the same number of hours you're going to have to spend thinking of a theme, coming up with some items and badges. And if you're going to spend that just to do your Civil War unit, take a step back, choose a theme, items, badges, whatnot, that could apply to your year, because now you have this thing that always is running in the background. That doesn't mean every day I do something about my Realm of Nobles theme. There's plenty of regular days. Come in, we're going to read this section, we're going to do this thing, we're going to do an EMC2 activity that has nothing to do with Realm of Nobles. But I have this thing that runs in the background that anytime I need to dip into, I can. I now can be playing one of these one-off lessons that isn't set in ancient medieval times. But I can also say, like, the winner of this earns some experience points, because they know this year-long game's happening in the background. So I actually think it's easier to do the big and just realize that not every day, not every lesson needs to connect to the big, but have that big run in the background. Kind of like Harry Potter house systems. Plenty of days regular, but then occasionally you're like, ooh, we're having this competition today.
Right. And I think that's what a lot of people need to hear is it doesn't have to happen every day, not every second, every waking hour. You can
I
throw
mean,
a
I'm
little,
sure that would be amazing,
that'd be really
Yes.
fun. Absolutely.
but like none of us get
Doesn't have to
paid enough or have enough support. Like, right? A video game can do that, can have 100 hours of video game experience that all is perfectly set in the Zelda world, because it was a team of 147 video game designers, graphic designers, writers. Like, at the end of the day, you are the English teacher.
Right.
Like, that's it. And so you need to minimize how much time that takes to maximize the most potential it can give.
Perfect. So kind of wrapping it up, last question for you. Where's the future of gamified learning, and how do you envision it evolving in the years to come?
Wow. I think I have a hopeful view of it. I mean, I think more and more people are realizing we have engagement issues. I will tell you, it's still a struggle to convince the powers that be, right? Like, all admin used to be teachers, and they used to be teachers a while ago.
Right.
And so when they think back to, like, well, what was needed? Well, we used to be bringing in like reading, like literacy PD.
Or
Why
the,
don't
or
we
the,
do that? We'll do
or the,
that.
or the back to basics people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, I get why they choose what they choose, but like, I don't know how long that'll take to break that cycle. I think the teachers see it. I think the teachers in the classroom realize, really, engagement, whether you call it gamification or not, like, your choice, but I think it's an engagement issue, is what we are in control of. There are plenty of other outside sources that are causing trouble with, like, obviously income disparity between people, like, right? There's lots of community issues, but the thing that teachers are in control of is how they paint the experience for their students. And the more we like realize that, the quicker we're going to see results. And I am optimistic that we are moving in that direction. I don't see gamification or engagement strategies going away like literally for the next 50 years. That should be like one of our top 3 priorities, I'll say. Where I am a little more pessimistic, like I said, is I don't know if our admin see it that same way. I think right now they're data driven,
Right.
and I think what they have to realize is like data driven does not mean that's all we focus on, right? Like I think the more we can improve the inputs in education, the more the outputs will improve. But if you only focus on the outputs, you're going to make wrong decisions about the inputs. You're going to say it's more state testing. You're going to say that it's more district testing. You're going to say we should coach up to those district tests. And that goes back to like the riding the bike. I think you're going to miss a lot of humanity there. And over the long term, your data-driven decisions are going to turn your kids into dust. Like they're not robots. Like they're humans. Like we need to approach education in a balanced way. Like I love data. I love spreadsheets. Like I'm not anti-data, but it needs to be a more holistic creation.
Well said.
Yes.
Yeah.
And your books, we have that in the show notes as far as if anyone wants to check those out. I always bring them to our sessions when we do any gamified sessions, just so
Yes.
that way if they want to take a peek at it, because Explore Like a Pirate was like a great starting point. And I love how you and John Meehan added that other like really step-by-step how to do it. So
And like
between
what
those
it
two
looks
books,
like. What
yes.
is it? The Pirate Run. One of them, like the aha moment. That was.
Yes. I think I was in this one. Yes.
Nice.
Fully engaged. But yes, so we those books are great resources for teachers. So we will have them for teachers if they
And then
wanna
I
check it
pulled
out.
it up. I always do this quote you gave us at ISTE. We want our students to be cognitively engaged, not behaviorally engaged. So that's why we have to switch it up. I think that's, to me, that's one of the biggest reasons why.
Yes.
Why is it time to change? Why do we need to revamp these every day?
I love it. Always love the like opportunity to talk about the passion of engagement-based learning. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Of
I
course.
appreciate
Thanks for joining.
Is there anything you wanted to say that we didn't quite get to, or I just want to make sure we covered everything, or is there anything that?
I'm just going to make a plug that like this has been the more and more that I do gamification and my work with John Meehan and EMC2 Learning, where there's hundreds of these activities. The more I do this, the more I lean into this style of teaching, it has been better outcomes for my students. It has been happier days for my students. And then like secretly, it's also been the most fun for me. Like it is truly a win-win-win for everyone. So I really do encourage all of you to try to take that first step, take that next step, wherever you are on that journey.
Perfectly said. So reminder to our listeners, check the show notes. We got all the resources in there for to find Michael Matera and the books that are out there. We also have video to the tech tip video if you need to see that. We also get, again, renewal credits in Unified Talent. There's a link in there. For every 2 episodes, you get 1 hour of renewal credit. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast to get notifications of new episodes. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear about how you're using gamification. We'd love to give us examples so that we can share those with other teachers. And if you want to be on that podcast, please reach out. We would love to have you on. So thank you again so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.